My name's Tom Kinsella. I am the Elizabeth and Samuel Levin Director of the Alliance Heritage Center. But let me backtrack slightly. About 15 years ago, I was tasked with starting a local history center at Stockton called the South Jersey Culture and History Center. Anything from Burlington and Ocean County south, I claim as South Jersey, and we're interested in. Do a lot of work with students, do a lot of work with special collections at Stockton, try to collect the material, history, and culture of our area. At one point, my good friend Mark Dimitrov, who's around here someplace, said, "Hey, I've got a friend in Vineland, an attorney. You really need to meet this guy." And so I drove out to Vineland and I met Jay Greenblatt. Jay Greenblatt sketched the story of the Alliance Colony for me. I'd never heard it, and I was thrilled. He took me out to the chapel, showed me the cemetery and the grounds, and I was even more thrilled. I said, "Jay, I can get students interested in working on this material. What do you think?" He and others, Jay Einstein, the Federation, have been very supportive of introducing us to the community, where we ask for help in gathering materials that we can digitize and give back, or just to donate into our special collections so that we can preserve the special history of this place and tell its stories. The opening that I'm involved with today is of this Alliance Chapel. I have had a significant amount of help creating this renovation. Mike Cagno of the Noise Museum has been instrumental with his entire team. Couldn't do it without their great museum chops. Peter Murphy of Murphy Writing has been significant in helping us think about how to write about a community. And Heather Perez, my good friend, is the Special Collections Librarian at Stockton, who preserves safely the materials that have been donated. I want to have one more shout out to Patty Chapin. Where are you, Patty? Hold on, there's Patty Chapin. Patty Chapin is the Rudnick Fellow. She is my assistant director. She is a whiz. She has her PhD from Drew in public history and is a local historian herself. She is a tremendous researcher. She found the grant, the Mellon grant, that eventually allowed us to work with students for 2 years and to renovate the inside of the chapel. She has marshaled those students and me politely, prodded me to get things done. We need a tent, Tom. We need a tent. If you speak with anyone today other than your friends, you ought to talk to Patty. She's wonderful. At this point, I'm going to call up Jay Greenblatt to the podium, and Jay's going to say a few words.
Okay, it was 45 years ago that I moved back to Pittsgrove Township, and I searched for my roots. A book by that name had been written shortly prior to then. And I found my roots here, where my father had been born. And I realized that it was going to be it was going to be 100 years since the founding. So we put together a jubilee, a yovel, and that all took place here. And we had a couple thousand people really interested in coming out to see it from all over. We had 600 people who were descendants of families from Alliance, come from all over the world. And it was a wonderful thing, and the flame burned brightly. And then after it was all over, and we had created this display in the chapel here, the flame dwindled. And I did the best I could over the many years since then to keep the flame alive. And I thought it was going out completely. And then a few things occurred. We had a thing called internet. We had a thing called Facebook. I went to the Historical Society in Vineland for a function there, and Pat Martinelli, who's sitting back there now, introduced me to a man named Mark Dimitrov, who's here today. And Mark said, I want you to meet this guy named Tom Kinsella. I met Tom Kinsella, and things started moving. And lo and behold, we wound up, along with the help of Jay Einstein, as Tom told you, and the help of a lady named Liz Posen, creating the Alliance Heritage Center at Stockton University, and it has just been wonderful. Locally, other people have taken up that same flame over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. This Jarrett Ross, who is a genealogist, created a group on Facebook, and that stimulated tremendous interest. We have, I don't know, 400 or 500 people now in that group. Finding their roots, something about this tribal feeling toward Alliance Colony. It's a slice of Americana. It's a slice of American history. Then we have Howard Jaffe, who is here locally in this area. Malia Levin and her husband William Levin found their roots and came back to this area. They are doing their part in carrying on, and this flame is starting to really, really burn brightly. And it makes me so happy, and I just feel like it's all been worth it for 45 years. So thank you so much for everything. Thank you for coming.
I'm going to ask Senator Mike Testa to come on up and say a few words.
Wow, what an honor. I have to say, following Jay Greenblatt speaking is not an easy task. Jay Greenblatt called me a couple weeks ago to see if I was interested in coming here. And when Jay Greenblatt gives you a phone call, it's sort of like E.F. Hutton, you listen. And for those that don't know me, and you might be confused by my surname and why I'm up here, my roots are also here. My mom and her family, the Flumans and the Fluman Baums, that was always confusing to me. Mom still is, by the way. Many are buried here in this cemetery, and they're Holocaust survivors. And it was taught to me at such a young age to honor your heritage. And it's just so wonderful to see all of the folks who were gathered here today. I see some of my teachers from Rossi School who happen to have a life-lasting impact on me. People like Jay Greenblatt who have dedicated themselves to the community and to the practice of law. The guy was a state bar president. That's pretty rare coming from South Jersey. And a dear friend of mine, one of my best friends of my entire life is William Levin. And I have to say, I was really sad when he went out further in the diaspora and moved to Brooklyn after he graduated college. And I was very upset about it because he's one of my dear closest friends. And I said, man, we lived kind of around the corner from each other growing up in Vineland, and nothing can make me happier or more proud of him and his family and getting back to their roots. William, you know this, I love you, pal. And seeing your family carry on that look exactly like you, by the way, that's kind of scary. But, this is about a heritage and never forgetting. Because if we forget where we're from, how can we possibly know where we are going? I remember coming here as a little boy, and I had a stone driveway. And I remember coming here and getting stones to put on all of the headstones of my family members and friends. And that's part of our heritage and what it is that we do. And we leave that sign as a sign of remembrance, and a sign of honor, a sign of love. And that's what this is. This is a passion project. It's a project of love. And I'm just so happy to be here today with each and every one of you, and it's such a learning experience every time you come to an event like this. I was talking to a gentleman back there. Each and every time you come to a place like this, you learn more. You learn more about the families that actually started here. Obviously, my family came here after World War II, but the Russian Jews who settled here in the 1800s, and you realize what a long and rich history. And William, you're wearing a funny shirt that I can't possibly take a picture with you because it has the Communist Party. I get your funny joke. I get it. But no, in all seriousness, this is such a wonderful day, not just for Alliance, but it's a wonderful day for South Jersey. It's a wonderful day for humanity to remember and to honor where we all came from. And it also should be a major sign of how we should all be united despite possible differences of where we came from and part of our ideologies. We need to be united. We need to come together. We need to do better. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to next call up Mike Cagno, the Executive Director of the Noyes Museum of Art at Stockton University.
So it's obvious I must have made Tom upset because it's hard to follow him, Testa, and Jay. So I don't know what I did wrong, but so I will tell you, following on the theme of saying no, there's two people in my life that I don't say no to. Number one is my wife, and number two is Tom. This is one of 9 projects that Tom and I have done together, and working with Patty, who is dynamite. Stockton University is committed to extending and telling the stories out in the community, and this is a passion project. Senator Testa had it correct, and one that I thoroughly enjoyed being a part of. So, Tom, I want to thank you for that opportunity. And this illustrates partnership and collaboration with the community, with the university, cultural organizations, each and every one of you, of not only telling the story from the past, the story of today, but as I heard earlier this morning, of continuing it and handing it on to that next generation so that the story lives forever. So thank you for being a part of it. We help facilitate the curatorial aspects of the exhibition designs, from the lighting to the displays and the artifacts, and all the way down to the color of the wall. And it was so nice that I actually had to paint the wall this time. All I had to do was pick a color, so that was a nice change of pace. But it was great partnerships. And we're going to introduce Celeste, who is really the magic behind it all. So I want to introduce Celeste Casino. She started off as an intern at Stockton University, worked with Tom, worked with the museum, and all the panels that you see on there. She brought that to life, and she did a wonderful, beautiful job. She's done a couple projects with us, and I know that relationship will continue. So, Celeste, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. I created everything that you see in the chapel. And I just wanted to thank everybody for coming here. And when I was creating this, I wanted to evoke memories. So everything you see in there is pretty much in a scrapbook theme. It was a pleasure to work with Tom and Patty on this, and it was really their encouragement that motivated me to make this project happen. I was just very honored to be part of the project and having it displayed. So thank you very much.
I'm next going to call Peter Murphy, my good friend and author, to the podium.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Patty, and for having me, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. The first takes place around 1915 when a woman named Irene Hickey, who lived on the lower west side of Manhattan, married a fellow named Frankie Murphy. And a year or 2 later, Frankie Murphy went to war, and he was a blacksmith. Can you imagine a blacksmith in the lower west side of Manhattan? But that was a big business then. Frankie Murphy died, not from the war, but from the flu, a few days before the armistice. Frankie had a younger brother named Teddy, who, as the custom, stood up to marry the grieving widow. And Teddy and Irene had 3 children, one of whom was my father. That's history. If it weren't for World War I, my father would never have been born. I think about that a lot, but I'm even more affected by the second story. In 1943, my father, Eddie Murphy, enlisted, and a year later wound up in Wales, not the, mammal fish, the country, and fell in love with a barmaid, Thelma Elias Samuel from the Valleys, and they got married, and I was one of their children. If it weren't for World War II, I wouldn't be here. So I hate war, but I'm very complicated by this. What I realized is that not only is my life affected by history, but so is yours. Everyone's lives are affected by history. And my job, as part of Murphy Writing of Stockton University, is to try to get you to write your stories. So I was asked by Patty to put together a packet of readings, which are in your folder, in your bag. If you didn't get that, then you want to see Patty or over here at the registration desk. And I have a little packet of readings. There's an interview I did with a friend whose name is Susan Crosley. I haven't seen Susan in 25 years, but I remembered her saying that her father was a chicken farmer, and she grew up on a chicken farm. All right, so I managed to find Susan Crosley, and we had a Zoom. She's now living in Costa Rica. And for an hour or so, she told me her story, and I edited it down to just a little piece that's in your packet for just a page and a half. Susan's parents, whose names, let me get you the names, Fred and Elsie Offer are buried right over here in the cemetery. And the family had a very good friend whose name was, where's his friend name? William. Where'd William go? I wrote it down. Come on, William. Anyway, name will come up in a moment. But William was a musician in Germany, and he was in Auschwitz, and he and his two brothers were playing in Auschwitz, and they're featured in the film Schindler's List. And when the film came out, and at the end of the film, if you recall, there were several people putting stones that were, he didn't want to do it because he didn't think that any film could honor what a great man Schindler was, who also was his best man at his wedding. So anyway, I wish I wrote his name. I did write it here, but I just can't find it. But anyway, in your packet, you have a copy of this little anthology. There's this narrative by Susan Crosley, Susan Offer. There are a couple of poems, one by Stephen Dunn, who was a Stockton professor and a Pulitzer Prize winner, another by John Wolkowitz, who's not here, but it's a book coming out next week, and another poem by a young woman who I never knew her before, but she wrote a lovely poem to South Jersey. And there's also a little bit here about the Jersey Devil. If you're interested in writing your own story, there's also a prompt in here to take home with you. And if you want to talk with myself or my colleague Taylor over the table after this, we can help you to give you opportunities and resources to write your story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having me.
One more. Last but not least, I would call Heather Perez to the podium. Heather Perez is the Bjork Library Special Collections Librarian at Stockton.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. It's so fun to actually see people that I've only read about. You know, in our special collections, we have, what, Tom, maybe 15 boxes of material having to do with Alliance, about that. And, you know, big boxes of things. And I see your names. I see your forefathers' names. I see all of the histories that are there. And it's so fun to actually see the people that have come from that history. And it's a delight to be here with you today and to be able to honor your forefathers and certainly honor the history of Alliance. And also to be able to let you know that we care about it and that we are preserving it, that we are going to make sure that your history is there for many years to come and stored safely in our special collections at Stockton so that your great-grandchildren or your great-great-grandchildren or children 200 years from now can also read the history of Alliance. So thank you so much.
The next portion is going to be run by William and Malia Levin. They're going to be talking about the mural that's been done over on the Bayek property. There is going to be food, so after this, if you want to join us with our food in the back, please do. The synagogue will be open as well. Once William and Maya their discussion, panel discussion has been completed. We're just visiting, so thank you. We're going to be right at that table.
Great. Hi, everyone. Good noon. So great to be here. I'm Molly Levin. Really nice to meet all of you. Really honored to be here and see everyone. The next portion of our program, this is my husband, William. He and I co-founded an organization called Acre Alliance Community Reboot, dedicated to living and preserving the history here at the first Jewish agricultural community in North America. And thanks to the New Salem County Historic Grant and the New Jersey Cultural and Historic Trust, we commissioned a beautiful mural over on that building, 3 sides of that building, which was done by noted artist Jonathan Blum, who's here with us today. It's on 3 sides of the building, and it depicts the history of the agricultural community, the waves of settlement that came here, and this is our official unveiling of that mural, the goal of which is to be part of this historic site and center for people to learn and live the history in an artistic way. And so I'd like to call up Jonathan, as well as 3 other Alliance Colony descendants whose significance will become known. William, Rich Brotman, who's here, and Dan Pelberg. If everyone could come up here, and we'll... Okay, so I think we're going to start by just talking a little bit about how we all came to be gathered here to work on this project together. So William and I met you, Jonathan, in Brooklyn. And maybe you can start by talking a little bit about how you came to be aware of this project and why it sort of fit with you and your history and your work.
No, it's great to be. I didn't realize this was going to be such an. I mean, I should stand. I didn't realize that this was going to be such an event. This is like, you know, we got senators, we got like people, like the whole community here. Like, so I there'd be like 5 people here, and we'd be in a circle. But I just wanted to say, like, so I have a studio in Brooklyn, in a storefront, and I paint a lot of animals and fictitious rabbis, and I you know, and that's kind of my thing. And I've met these guys in the neighborhood, and one day William comes in and says, "Hey, I have an idea. I have this mural. I have this historical mural, you know." And I'm like, "All right, you know." And he tells me this whole story. I'm like, "Okay, just get back to me." You know, and of course he did. He came back, and he refined this idea. And then I'm like, he says, "You on?" I'm like, "Okay." So, you know, it's been you know, it's taken a while, but it's done, and you should all go and see it. It's like up right, you know, 3 minutes away. And it really does depict, you know, from the shtetl all the way to, you know, the house that's actually falling apart right there. It's gonna be taken down, but that actually has that house in there, and just like the history of how this, you know, a fun abbreviated history of how this all became to be. So yeah, that's how I got pulled into it, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. I mean, now I was so impressed with that, you know, because I learned that history to do the mural, and now I just see it actually so, you know, so well preserved and so well done. It's real. What I did was real. Okay.
And when we're done with this Q&A portion, you're invited to join us as we walk over together, and we can walk around, and so you'll see what we're talking about if you haven't already. But the other 3 panelists here, Jonathan is maybe best known for his portrait work.
Yeah.
And there are 3 portraits which are part of the mural, and they depict 3 men who these 3 men here are each descendants of. So we've assembled we've assembled the descendants of all the portraits here to talk a little bit about relationship with us and their relationship with the people who are depicted, and now their relationship to seeing those people depicted in a mural in this way, in Jonathan's style. So maybe we could just kind of go one. I would love to hear each of you talk about kind of how you came to be reconnected with your history, but also with us, and so to be sitting here today. Maybe William, can you start?
Sure. Hi, I'm William Levin. I think anyone here who's from the area better knows me as Judge Harry Levin's grandson or Barry Levin's son. But I am William, named for my great-grandfather, William Hirsch Levin, whose name you may have seen memorialized in the cemetery and on various plaques. And I lived in the house directly behind you across the street when I was born in 1971. The house was my great-grandparents in 1900. And next to us is the famed Moses Bayek house. That was my great-great-grandfather. It's in disrepair, to say the least, but the house has become an icon and very sentimental for community members. It's part of my story. I'm from here and Vineland, New Jersey, where I grew up, and went to Brooklyn after college and really didn't come back here much other than to visit my parents. But now, in recent years, since I've been married to Malia 15 years ago, I think my pickup line is that I was from a Jewish farm in New Jersey.
True.
And
It worked.
and Malia said, like, I
recommend trying it.
Yeah, never heard that pickup line before, but it worked, and here we are. We have 4 children, thank God. And I have come back here now in recent years. It started off to kind of tie up loose ends with estate and property and technical things that I didn't really want to deal with. But in doing so, I came to learn more about my own personal history and my family and my descendancy, and realized it started coming together as I was doing unsavory work. So now, here we are, 15 years after that journey. I have come to love the history and didn't want to see it end with a cemetery, but wanted to see it continue as a cycle. And I have become deeply involved in Jewish community in Brooklyn and thought I could bring a little bit of that spirit back here where I grew up. So that's what brings me here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And this is Rich Brotman, whose ancestor is depicted on the first wall of the mural. We'll get back to him specifically in a bit, but Rich, can you just briefly kind of tell us what reconnected you here to us? And
Sure. Well, I guess my great-grandfather and William's great-great-grandfather, back in the day used to pal around here and put together this idea of having this town. And when I think about that and then look at, today, to still be involved in part of that creative enterprise is very cool. But so I'm Rich Brotman, son of Stanley Brotman. That's what most I was known. I grew up 8 miles away in Vineland, and we knew about, the story and the name, and we would come here, and visit relatives, but it wasn't talked about too much. It was kind of, well, that's cool, but, it didn't, but it seems to, as I began to become more conscious of things, seemed that people actually kind of knew about it. I found out later. But, and I started, I went to Philadelphia for higher education and enlightenment, and found them both. But I ended up drifting over to film school, film graduate school at Temple University. And so there's a class to make a documentary video of something. Video was new. There was film up until that point. Make a video on something. So, gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm conflicted, So my father said, well, go down to Brotmanville. The church has been sold, and it's going to become a Baptist. The synagogue has been sold to become a Baptist church. And go down there. Jay Greenblatt is there, and he's preparing all the items inside the cemetery to be moved to the Hever Kadisha here at Alliance Cemetery in the chapel. So I got this, this 3 boxes and a camera, and came down here one Sunday afternoon and met Jay, in the synagogue, and just as it was left, and that's my introduction to the story. And as I got more involved in the story, I met some of the old timers that were still here, the Heligs and the Savitsky's brothers, and visited their house, which was the original house. And, in 1981, and from that material, I was able to cobble together a documentary story about what happened here, and it was shown at the Centennial in 1982. But then we also had a crew here, friends from college come by, and we were shooting people attending the Centennial and finding more stories that we didn't know about before and people we didn't know what they had done. And then, again, there was another event here when they were thinking about maybe having the story preserved as a Disneyland type of exhibit. But fortunately, the world economy collapsed, and all that fell apart. And we are here today, which is a much better idea. And I want to thank Stockton for being involved in the area and the story, and allowing this place to be a place where you can come and everyone kind of comes back here.
And then, Rich, I think we found your documentary on YouTube kind of right when you were re-releasing it there, and then started showing it to people who were coming to our events, and so it had this resurgence.
Which astounded me, because I felt the story was over. I mean, I was into it, and I thought, wow, this is great, but it is what it is. It's done, and it's over. But then all of a sudden, other people started to tell the story. And in a way, when I came back in 1984, when I shot here in 1982 at the Centennial, my friends were in the cemetery filming people randomly. I was not there. And they met a descendant who said, I looked at that documentary that was shown out there, and I detected a note of failure, that Mr. Brotman thought that he had failed somehow. But I think quite the opposite is true. I think he, instead of being some isolated group of refugees huddled here on the shore, it turned into all these people that went off into the world to become Americans and do things and then return. So that speaks better for success than anything he could have thought of. And that's the first time, really, in my life, that was 1982, that we got the thought, hey, maybe he didn't fail. Maybe it wasn't a failure at all. It actually succeeded in a way that no one expected. So having discovered that and being able to still work with that story and bring it to people to experience for themselves is, I'm just happy to invite everybody and glad to be here with you. That's how I got it.
Thank you. And then Dan Pelberg is the great-great-nephew of Isaac Krasenstein, who is the portrait depicted on the second wall of the three-panel mural. And Dan, we have a really, I think, great story of how we reconnected and you became a partner with our work. So I want you to tell that.
Sure
But
thing.
also anything else that you want to introduce yourself as.
Like Molly said, I'm the great-great-great-grandnephew of Isaac Krasenstein. One extra great, yes, yes.
Shoot.
My grandmother's family is the Krasensteins from my mom's side, my mom over here. And so basically I had known very vaguely of my family's history in the area. I think my parents had taken me to the cemetery here maybe one time when I was younger. And then when I was living in Connecticut, my wife was working at Isabella Freedman, the Jewish Retreat Center. And I overheard someone talking about Jewish farming in South Jersey. I started talking. I said, oh, you should meet William and Molly Levin. They're doing something with Jewish farming in South Jersey. And so I met them. We started talking. I started talking to William about his ancestors. I said, well, this is great. I'm living in Philadelphia. When I come back, why don't we connect when you're down at the farm? And we made a plan to. And we came out here, and we went over to the cemetery, and we walked in. And we walked over to the grave of Isaac Krasenstein, which is the big tomb. You'll see it when you first walk in there. And I said, oh, this is, Isaac Krasenstein, my ancestor, all these things, and Williams walked to the gravesite right next to it and said, well, this is my great-great-grandfather, Moses Bayek. They're buried right next to each other. Now, my first thought was, it's a little problematic. They're not buried next to their wives, but setting that aside, it was a really amazing experience to be standing there with William in that cemetery for the first time, connecting, like, we are here as descendants of these people standing next to each other who are buried next to each other. And it really struck me, like, the importance of this place. And so over time, William and Amalia kept inviting me to come back, and eventually one day said, well, you're spending time here. Do you want to join the board of our organization? And, Acre is a really great organization that's, there's a mission statement, there's all these things. I'll say what it means to me, which is breathing life back into this community in this area, breathing Jewish life back in here. A lot of times we look at history and it feels stagnant or it feels like it's in the past, but for me, I have 2 young kids. They're friends with William and Amalia's kids. To see them running around here together, it makes it feel like the history is still alive. And I think that is the most important thing because, in the Jewish tradition, we often talk about our lineage being from the Torah, right? We talk about lineage from Moses and then who passed the Torah to pass the Torah, all these things. And I think it's just as important to recognize that lineage in our Jewish tradition and the people that have persevered through really, really difficult times and how we've come to be here today. Each and every one of us individually has our own story that's connected through all of these people through time. And I will say for myself that being here makes me feel like I am connected to those people throughout time. So it's really a privilege and an honor to be a part of this community in whatever way possible. And the last thing I'll say is that, my wife and I, we live in Philadelphia. We're part of the Jewish community in Philadelphia. And it's amazing to us that not many people know about this place still. And we talk about it, and it's a great opportunity for us to bring friends, to bring people here to show them what is here, because I'm just really surprised at how close we are to the Philadelphia Jewish community, a very, very large Jewish population that don't really know a lot about this place. And, spreading that awareness of the history here and what's going on here, I think is really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, I want to come back to you and your art and the process of the journey of making this. You talked about how it began and you were a little dubious that it was going to come to fruition, but then it did. I think, and we'll see this more when we walk around the mural, but a lot of the work is sort of in your signature style. It's, whimsical. You're playing with proportions. You have rabbinic figures. I guess I wanted to know, what was unique about working on this that you haven't experienced before? Like, what was new or different? I could say for myself, we were here, Jonathan was here twice for 2 extended stretches working on this mural. And there was one time when he was doing the first wall where I was here with the kids and I had to bring them back to Brooklyn because school was starting. And we have like security cameras on the outside of the garage. So I would get these alerts that there was motion and I would keep clicking on it. And then I would just see Jonathan not moving, staring up at the wall. And I was like,
overwhelmed.
Is my app broken? Like, is it the computer? Is the camera frozen? But no, it was just him like looking on motionless at the mural in progress.
They talk about a blank canvas. Well, a blank wall is like a whole other level. And then you're just trying to depict this story. And we worked it out. We had drawings and how it was going to look. It starts off with the shtetl and burning, and then the boat that brings them, the first immigrants to this place, to Castle Gardens. And Castle Gardens is before Ellis Island. And that is an interesting. That is a great story. And then they've come to the farm, and it shows the farm, and I have a farm, and then it becomes Moses Brotman, and then that's sort of like with the remember the American Gothic painting, famous. Well, this is kind of his great
my great great grandfather's
uncle, and how bringing them. It's his anyway. And then it goes into the chicken farm, which became like the kosher chicken capital of the world, and then it goes around, and then it becomes grapes. It's like it's a great story, and then and I got pulled into it. I love being a part of this, and I'd say it was much more fulfilling than I even kind of imagined, actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
So what was happening when you were staring? Just trying to figure out how to get it all on a wall? Like what
Yeah,
was?
no, that was me going, what the?
Got it. More extensive than you anticipated.
yeah.
I see. I want to know. So I'd like to turn to each of you, and maybe you can talk a little bit about. Well, each of you have an ancestor, like we said, who's depicted. First of all, like, can you give us? Do you have any like insider family lore that you can share with us that maybe we wouldn't read in one of the, I don't know, a publicly available historic document that you want to share about this ancestor? And also, well, actually, maybe we can start with that, and then I'll circle back around. Okay, briefly. Yes.
All right. Well, it's really probably to see the impact that this had on my father was the most influential thing. I mean, he was basically, just a guy from a small town, and then the war happened, and things happened to him, and he then saw the world from a different point of view, and came back to the town after the war, him and his buddies, and they built this, the life that we all were born into. And we didn't, so to have him always have one foot firmly on the ground here, whenever he would have to give a talk at the Cumberland County Bar Association or the State Bar Association or ultimately the federal bench, when he had to say something about where, what mattered to him, what's important, he would always talk about this place and what happened in this place and what it means to have, to be, to have a place like this, either that you're physically at, or I took it to mean an experience that you understand. It's a very American process. And he basically, it was one of the main foundations of his life, was what happened here. But it wasn't forced on anybody because we weren't really sure it was a good idea, but family-wise. But it was always there, and now, it's been validating itself over time as an important thing to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Something about Moses Bayek that maybe everyone wouldn't know?
Yeah, I was perusing primary sources and learned Moses Bayek, I think, had his first kid when he was 14 years old. It's something I cannot relate to, but he did have a lot of kids, which is something I can sort of relate to. I'm halfway there to matching my great-grandfather. I learned that Moses Bayek used to kind of in irreverence, used to smoke a cigar on Shabbat, which is generally strictly forbidden, but it's something maybe I can relate to. And I also, I inherited through a cigar box that my great-great-grandfather, Moses Bayek, left behind, and my grandfather, the Judge I. Harry Levin, kept in his library until he died, and then I inherited this cigar box. And so the cigar box is an old Philadelphia cigar box, which some people may not know. Moses Bayek is the father of Max Mayer and Sam Bayek, who went on to leave South New Jersey, on to New York City, and then to Philadelphia to start Bayek Brothers Cigars, and then became Philadelphia Cigars. So if you know the Philly Blunt, which is known in urban culture as the cigar that you unravel and then take out some of the tobacco and put marijuana in and then smoke that, that originated basically here. It was the brainchild of this house. So I learned that. Maybe that's a good one.
That's good. Hard to top that, so yeah.
Yeah, I'll pass it on to Dan.
Yeah, I don't think my story can top that one either. But basically, so what I've learned about the Krasensteins is actually that they were very connected to Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And the Krasenstein name is actually mentioned in Rabbi Nachman's seminal work, Likutei Maharan. where it mentions the Krasensteins as being very close to Rabbi Nachman. They were his benefactors, and they helped support him financially. And there is a story that I did read that the Krasensteins, they sent, I believe it was half of their gold to Uman, to Rabbi Nachman, and everyone said, "Oh, you're crazy! You're sending the rabbi half your gold? Well, you've worked so hard for this, for your family, for all these things." And they said, and the Krasensteins had this faith, and they said, "Don't worry, Hashem, God will take care of us." And then eventually they moved. I believe in the story they moved to Uman, and the story is vague, but it says they were returned their gold tenfold. After they had moved to Uman. Story is probably kept intentionally vague, so I have no idea how or why that happened. But basically, the story being is that their connection to their faith. Isaac Krasenstein was a rabbi here. He's depicted with wrapped tefillin on the mural over there, and it just shows the faith that the Krasenstein family had, or Isaac Krasenstein specifically. When it came to being very devout in their religion and their faith, and what they believed was right. So that's the story that I've learned.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll do one more round, I think. And then we can walk and continue to talk, and we'll do a little loosely guided walk around. But also the goal was that this is living, is supposed to be there for everybody to just peruse freely. There are also, we just put up QR codes in the windows that will take you to a website that describe even more about each wall and what it means and all of that. So it's really meant as a self-guide. It can exist as a self-guided walk as well. Jonathan, I don't know if you have specific closing words in mind, but I would also like to know if there's a specific part of the mural that you feel is particularly representative of your work, or if it's something that is a departure that you felt like was a risk or something new that you did. I don't know if there's anything that you kind of stands out to you in the whole.
Yeah, no, I think in a way this is some of my best work actually. So it's nice to see so big,
yes.
And so we're definitely checking out. I like it. I like what happened. And it's funny, today I was going to do the last little detail, which is this a little bit of a grape, because there is it was a grape vine. It was a vineyard. It was literally a vineyard, and I have that with Bayek. I actually have him holding up grapes, but I actually wanted to put a grapevine, the last little detail that I was going to, and then I was going to do a little fiddler on the roof just as a poetic, I like that idea, like, what is it, shaky, but you still got a fiddle, or anyway, but that actually, all our paint that we had dried up over the winter, so actually we have to go get paint, so it's a whole other thing, but anyway, I would just say it's really good. I've been sending pictures of these, murals to everyone I know, and posted it a lot, and and I've gotten more mural commissions from this.
Oh, that's great. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Malia. My closing remark is what I ended with. I ended on a funny note about the cigars, but what I meant to say, the contents of that cigar box were letters, mostly from Moses Bayek's sons and daughters to him as he traveled, studied, wrote these esoteric books of studies of Judaism, Kabbalistic thoughts. But one piece of paper that stood out to me specifically was, so Moses Bayek and I, by extension of descent, are descendants of a famous rabbi known as the Vilna Gaon, which means the genius of Vilnius in Lithuania. And he was known to be very smart and also a studier of mathematics and science in addition to Torah and Talmud. And I found among these ephemera, these old pieces of paper, a piece of, it was a sheet where it looked like Moses Bayek, my great-great-grandfather, was calculating perfect powers of 2. So it would go 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 124. And my son picked this up as a hobby on his own. He's not here. He's running around as he should be. He's 9 years old. But my son can calculate in his head 2 to the 22nd power and recite that, and he's still going. I looked at Moses Bayix. He actually made a mistake when he got up to 2 to the 7th power, and it was all messed up to then. All the way to the 50th power, every number is wrong. So it's just, it got me thinking, like, okay, so there's some genius in my family, but as the generations go down, we are getting watered down a little bit. But God willing, we're coming back to Torah. We're coming back to Jewish life. We're coming back to, my son is a testament to this, that we're returning to that level of connection with God, Judaism, in this area. And so thank you all. Thank you. Amen.
Rich, do you have a closing thought? Maybe
Yeah,
about
the thought that hit me right now is, I was afforded this chance. I had, we're just getting stuff, any photos people had, any stories they had, just gathering it and making sure it was well archived. But then going back of it, it's the middle of the night, and I'm there going through this footage. It's still, it's quiet. I'm hearing, watching them tell these stories about what it was like, growing up here when Mrs. Bakerman painted her chickens, green across the street, and, just these kinds of stories. And then the meanings started to, stack up in different ways, figure out how to thematically orient them. So by involvement, and also involvement through editing, where time is stopped. And I just really felt that I knew these people, like I never knew anybody else. And I'm grateful to having been able to do that. And so when people see the film, they're real people, and they lived here, and that's how things were like, and we're better off as a result. So thank you to them, and thank you to us.
yes.
What's that?
How can we see that film?
Oh, it's on Vimeo, and there are links all over. There's just a piece of it showing in there. I think but it's on Vimeo. Just first chapter in the new book on Vimeo.
Venmo's
Venmo has
good
nothing to
too,
do with it. It's on Vimeo, but there's an hour-long version and a 10-minute version for those who don't have time. Yes, and those people are there.
Before
Okay.
I say my last closing remark, one other piece of contextual context I think is very interesting. William mentioned that his ancestors were, he comes from the descendant of the Vilna Gaon, right? And I mentioned about how my ancestors were very close to Rabbi Nachman. If you know anything about those, Rabbi Nachman and Hasidus and the Vilna Gaon, and that's what they would not have gotten along very well. Let's put it that way, at all. And it's just another interesting thing to see that they're buried next to each other, that we are very close and connected as friends. And so it's just another nice thing. But yeah, I think, again, I'll go back to what I said about feeling like I'm living history in the present, which I think is really important, especially in, I think in today's world where we often feel very disconnected from one another. And I think as Jews, a lot of times I find that even friends who, I have friends who are very religious and connected to Judaism through the written word of the Torah. And I have friends who very strongly identify with being Jewish, but are not religious, really could care less about reading the Torah, but connect in some other sort of way. And to me, I think through our ancestors and through the people that came before us is another way to connect to our heritage, which I think is very important because people find access points to being Jewish in all sorts of ways. And so I think this is a really strong one for me personally. And I think that, when I meet other people and then they start to think, even through this, I've really been feeling very connected to my wife's family, who has a very similar story. They came from Russia and immigrated to North Dakota, right? And it's in North Dakota and had farmland, all these, not farmland, but, all these different kinds of things. So, I think when people hear the story of what's happened here, they often think to themselves, well, where do my ancestors come from? And then maybe that sparks some sort of thing in their mind to go down that rabbit hole. So like this can also be a source of inspiration, not just for people who are from this area, but want to connect to their Jewish roots in some way or another and don't really know how. And so, yeah, it's really lovely being here, and thank you all for coming.
I think we have time for if there are questions from the crowd. about the mural or anything any topics we've trodden upon here? And if not, that's fine too. Yeah.
This is not about the mural. I haven't seen it yet, but the entrance to the cemetery. There used to be an arch over it that said the Alliance Cemetery, and I don't see it anymore.
I think that I think there are two entrances. There's a newer one, and then
Very
inside
good.
there is one with an arch.
I'm glad to
Yes,
know that.
yes.
Thank you. And I really enjoyed all the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Tom, but then after that, we'll take a walk over to the mural and. Oh. Oh, sure, of course. Yes. Oh, thank you. Yes. So, I'm sorry. Yes, I'll repeat the question. So, the question was, what are we doing with the organization ACRE, which is. Thank you. Yes. So, ACRE, which again stands for Alliance Community Reboot, is a nonprofit organization that William and I founded in 2016 when we were starting along the journey that William described. Dan is on our board, as is Howard Jaffe, who's here too. And our goal really is to have projects like the mural. We've had some farming projects that people have gotten involved in. We've celebrated some holidays. And our goal is to use this land and this spot as a way to, like William said, connect to, and how Dan said so beautifully, to connect to history by continuing it, by celebrating holidays here, by bringing our children here, by living Jewish connected life here as these ancestors did. And we're so happy to partner with Stockton and to partner with everyone who's had a part in doing that. But thank you for asking, and stay tuned because we'll have more. What's coming up? What is coming up? Yes, thank you. There'll be Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur services in Alliance Synagogue, which is the active synagogue across the street right here, which Howard's going to be opening to provide a little tour right after this. But also, it's not just a place to tour and remember what it was like when ancestors prayed. It's a place to go and pray now and connect to the spirit of those ancestors who prayed there for so long. And we'll be doing that in community on Rosh Hashanah, so in just 2 days, and then again on Yom Kippur. So yes, and we're working on another event to commemorate the second anniversary of October 7th, which we'll be doing here, which I think is a very powerful place given the history of persecution and resilience that is whose spirit is so strong here. So that's the kind of thing that we're committed to doing. Thank you so much for asking. Thank you. Great. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I didn't expect this today. I came here because it's before Rosh Hashanah. I have my parents, my grandparents buried here. But I've for many years now, I was wondering about Moshe Bayuk. And this is like, I took a picture of the tombstone. It's really pretty incredible yichus that you have. It says on the tombstone, Yehuda Moshe ben Yaakov Bayuk, Baal HaMachaber, or Torahs Moshe Usfarim Acherim. He authored a number of Sfarim. Neched Harav HaChosid Rebbe Yosef.
5 books. Get it? Moshe, he wrote 5 books, yeah.
It doesn't say here 5. It just says Torah, the book.
That's the insider info.
Oh, very good. Neched Harav HaChosid Rebbe Yosef Baal Shem, grandson of the rabbi, the Chassid, Rabbi Yosef Baal Shem, Zatzal, Zichrono, Neched Harav HaGon Rabbi Moshe Pinchuk Zatzal, Chosno, who was the Chassan Shal Harav HaGon Rabbi Eliel Zatzal Mivilna. I was always wondering who this was, and now I get to see his great, it's amazing. And also that the story with Rabbi Nachman Breslov. So I'm very thankful to hearing these stories. It's really incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know what's happening either. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Let's thank Acre again for the presentation. Thank you. Two things. One, there's food in the back. Please eat it. And at 4 o'clock today in the Landis Theater in Vineland, Susan Donnelly is going to be showing her wonderful hour-and-a-half long documentary on Alliance. If you haven't seen it, you'll want to. It's free. It's open to the public. Thanks for coming out today.
Excuse me, let me just say one thing. We've complimented Tom, but the entire my name is Lois Decker. My father was Jacob Stavitsky. He was raised on a farm not too far from here, which we still have in the family, by his grandparents, and they were original settlers here in Alliance. I am so grateful that this committee has maintained this, and it is now for history's all time. It's really wonderful. I thank everybody who has had connection with this. The Alliance film is terrific. So if you have the opportunity and are able to see it today, by all means do that. And I am just so grateful that for the preservation of the history of this land. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, folks.